It's time for another exciting edition of the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. Stay tuned as we discuss local and national sports from Southeast Missouri and beyond. And now, without further ado, let's get on with the show. The Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle is brought to you by Royal Retros. If you like cool throwback jerseys of defunct sports teams, Royal Retros is the place to buy. If you go to royalretros.com and you order with the code SPORTSDESK, all one word, you can get a little bit off your order. So check out Royal Retros. And now on with the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.
And welcome back to another edition of the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders.
And Kyle is out this week. He hollered at us earlier this morning. He is feeling under the weather. So this week it's just me and Mark, but we still got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we're going to lead off with everybody's local team, the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, it's been a bad June for the Cardinals. Not much has changed since we talked last week. They were swept by Toronto at home and then went on an unfortunate trip to Milwaukee where they dropped 3 of 4 to the Brewers. Hopefully they can recover this week against the Chicago White Sox. They won their opener on the South Side by a score of 12-2, and last night's game was rained out due to inclement weather in the Chicago area, so they are currently in the first game of a doubleheader. And the last time that I looked, they were leading 1-0 in that. Eric Fetty is pitching for the Cardinals, and I don't know the opponent pitcher's first name, last name is Burke. Again, I rarely, if ever, follow the American League, so hopefully the Cardinals can maybe sweep this doubleheader and then come home this weekend, which, by the way, this is all technically still spring baseball. First day of summer isn't until, I believe it's Saturday. I don't know when the exact summer solstice is, but my birthday is on June 21st, and so whether it's on the 20th or the 21st or the 22nd, I always consider my birthday to be the first day of summer. So wherever the sun technically lands in the northern sky this weekend will be the official start of summer. And it's about time for the Cardinals to get hot again. They've got 3 coming up against the Cincinnati Reds at home, and then for the first time this season, rather unusual schedule, it'll be the first time that we see the Chicago Cubs, and that is a 4-game series starting next Monday. So I would say if the Cardinals want to have a legitimate chance to stay in the playoff conversation, they're going to have to win. They're going to have to sweep the White Sox. They need to take at least 2 out of 3 and 2 out of 3 against Cincinnati, and then 3 out of 4 against Chicago. So it doesn't get any easier from that point. Before I go on to the standings, anything that you've got, Mike, about their performance recently or these series that are coming up ahead?
Well, the good news is they are playing the White Sox right now, one of the worst teams in baseball. And if the Cardinals are going to kind of get the car jump started a little bit, that's a great way to do it. Like you said, the Reds and the Cubs, those are both big series, and they could very well tell the tale of this season for the Cardinals. So it is going to be very interesting. I think we will know a lot more by the time we record again next week.
Yeah. Looking at the standings, the Cardinals have dropped back to just 3 games above 500, the 38-35 record. Thanks to their series loss against Milwaukee, they've fallen down into 4th place. Of course, again, the race in the Central is for second place. The Chicago Cubs are running away with the NL Central this year. Milwaukee and Cincinnati are technically tied for second. They're both sitting 6.5 games out of first, with the Cardinals a half game back at 7 games. So we do have a chance to pick up some steam, pull ahead of Cincinnati, and maybe just cut into that Cubs lead a little bit. Frankly, the way the Cardinals have been playing lately, I'm not very optimistic about their chances against the Cubs. This just seems to be one of those seasons where everything is working in the favor of Chicago. Looking at the National League wild card race, however, we're still just a game back from the third available wild card spot. The Phillies look to be pretty comfortable at the top of the NL wild card at 44-30. They're up 4.5 games above the rest of the competition. Second is San Francisco, sitting a game and a half up. Following them, another game and a half back of San Diego Padres. And then we've got that same order as we do in the Central: Milwaukee, Cincinnati, St. Louis. And St. Louis is one game back. So the NL wild card is still tight. The fact that the Cardinals are just a game out of a playoff spot means that they are still in the conversation. So, as we move down, the rest of this month, getting a little bit closer to the All-Star break, it's all about positioning. It's where are you going to be in terms of the second half of the season. And for those of you who are interested in what's going on in the American League, the AL wild card, our friend Cameron Meisner and his team, the Tampa Bay Rays, are currently sitting atop the wild card spot with a 3-game lead over their competitors. Toronto is a half game behind them, with Cleveland and Boston both tied for the third spot, and they're followed up by the Mariners, the Twins, the Angels, the Royals, and the Rangers. So those are all the teams still in competition for a wild card spot in the American League.
Indeed, and it's going to be interesting. The All-Star break is coming up, the unofficial midway point of the season, though it usually occurs a little past the technical halfway point, but still, we're going to know a lot more soon. But we're going to switch gears before we talk about the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals. We're going to talk a little bit of WNBA, and one of the topics we're going to talk about today is WNBA player Sophie Cunningham, who is originally from Columbia, Missouri. She went to high school at Rockbridge and did not just play basketball at Rockbridge. Mark, I'm going to let you tell me a little bit more there.
Yeah, as it turns out, she was a kicker on the varsity boys team. Later on in the season, she came in during an injury. If you're wondering why we're talking about the WNBA and why we're talking about Sophie Cunningham, you obviously haven't been on social media today. I just found out about this morning, but there was a recent game between the Indiana Fever, who Cunningham plays for, and the Connecticut Sun. And if you don't know anything about the WNBA, there is a woman in her second season out of Iowa named Caitlin Clark. Maybe you've heard of her, who is the star player for the Indiana Fever. And, Caitlin is really interesting because she's clearly one of the best players in the WNBA. But one of the problems that she has faced is her massive unpopularity among her peers on other teams. And part of it is because she's one of the best players. She's highly competitive. She has amazing skills. She can do things out on the court that the other women, frankly, just can't. And she knows it, and she talks about it. She chirps a lot out on the court. She's aggressive. And I mean that in a positive way. I don't mean that as a criticism. But the real resentment from the players in the rest of the league is how popular she has made the sport. Since Caitlin Clark came into the league, the stats for WNBA, their television stats, their social media stats, their popularity, jersey sales, anything associated with the business of the WNBA has exploded with Caitlin Clark's presence in the league, I'm going to momentarily end my personal boycott of Colin Cowherd. I'm boycotting Cowherd until after J.J. McCarthy starts the season for the Vikings 5-0 or 6-0, and he has to apologize for being an idiot about what J.J. McCarthy was going to be in the NFL. However, I will break my embargo to say this. A few weeks ago, I heard Colin describe Caitlin Clark's comp as who is the comparable athlete, who can we say that she's like, and obviously people might say Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan. No, Tiger Woods. Colin said her comp is Tiger Woods, in that when Tiger fully declared as a professional and started winning major tournaments right out of the gate, he completely changed the sport of golf. People who had never ever paid attention to golf before were suddenly tuning in every weekend to see what Tiger would do, because he was doing amazing things. And we look at the stats, and Caitlin Clark has done the same thing. I mean, she has elevated the game to heights that it's never ever been at before. And we might add to this that just in terms of her salary, I mean, she makes less than community college professors. Not me personally, but there are some others across the nation. They don't get paid a lot of money in the WNBA, but Caitlin Clark has elevated the sport, and rather than being happy about that, they're resentful that the attention that the league is getting wasn't there before. And Tiger probably got a lot of the same reactions. It's like, hey, we've been here for years. How come you're just paying attention now? Sometimes you get these generational athletes that change the whole thing. That's the background if you're not fully familiar with what's going on. So what's been happening is that Caitlin gets beat up on the court quite a bit. She takes a lot of hard fouls. She's taken a lot of cheap shots. To her credit, she just gets back up and keeps playing the game. But Sophie Cunningham isn't having any of that. Sophie also plays for the Indiana Fever, and in this most recent game that they played against the Connecticut Sun, Clark was eye gouged on a defensive play by a Sun player whose name escapes me. Her last name is Sheldon, and I can't remember her first name. Anyway, you can see this on the replay. I mean, she's not going for the ball at all. She pokes Caitlin in the eye, and Caitlin reaches up to grab her eye, and another player from the Sun comes over and knocks her to the floor. So no one is ejected for this. We could have a long conversation about the quality of the referees' performance in these games, because they're not protecting her. They're just letting the players take the cheap shots at her, which is definitely bad for business for the WNBA, because
it is. Clark
was out for 2 weeks with a quadriceps injury in her thigh, and the ratings cratered when Clark was out. When she wasn't playing, no one was paying attention. It's like the way it used to be when Tiger first started getting hurt and dropping out of tournaments. It's like, is Tiger playing in the Masters? No, why bother? So later on in the game, Sheldon had a breakaway and was driving to the basket, and Sophie Cunningham basically put her in a headlock and threw her to the floor. And then when Sheldon got up and charged at Sophie grabbed her ponytail and yanked her head down, and they were going at it. And since that happened, her presence on social media has absolutely exploded. And I would say that the pro-Sophie sentiment against the anti-Sophie sentiment is running about 50-1, at least on my social media feeds. And I was wearing out my thumbs this morning commenting on all the pro selfie posts with an M-I-Z, seeing if any other Mizzou grads would shout out with the proper response.
Z-O-U!
Absolutely. There we go. Sophie Cunningham jerseys are completely sold out. If you're thinking, oh, I like this girl, you're going to have to wait a while until they restock. By the way, Tyrese Halliburton's jersey is also sold out because he's been doing some pretty extraordinary things. So one other thing that I wanted to, by the way, something else we didn't mention, Sophie received her black belt in Taekwondo when she was 6 years old, and that's earning her the name on social media, Black Belt Barbie. Because she's got the blonde hair and sort of like the typical look. But a lot of attention now to Indiana, and frankly, I just love it. If the league is not going to penalize for cheap shots and clear it, obviously it's a tough sport, it's competitive, fouls are going to happen. But, when somebody comes up after the play is over and shoves another player from behind and they fall to the court, that should be an automatic ejection. Women's basketball, men's basketball.
I agree.
In professional hockey, it's called cross-checking, and it's a 5-minute major penalty. It's like you don't take cheap shots, and you also don't take cheap shots at your league's star. And for those of you like us who are old enough to remember Michael Jordan, there was a time where Michael Jordan was treated like this. When he first came up in the league and he was going up against Larry Bird in Boston and going up against Isaiah Thomas in Detroit, he got beat up. Of course, it's a different kind of game in the NBA. You could play defense a lot better. They didn't go to the lengths that they do now to protect their offensive stars. And so what the Brain Trust in Chicago finally did is one of the best decisions they ever made was that they signed Dennis Rodman to be Jordan's enforcer. So it's like, you want a cheap shot, MJ? Go ahead, but Rodman's coming to get you. And once Rodman established that, okay, if you hit MJ, I'm hitting you back, and I'm going to hit you harder and harder every time that I have to do it, the cheap shots stopped at that point. And so, what we're seeing here is that, Sophie Cunningham has established herself as Caitlin's enforcer, and we'll see as the rest of the league year plays out how that works out for Caitlin Clark. To her own credit, after the game, when she was asked about the eye gouge, the cheap shot foul, what Sophie did later on in the game, her only response is, you came to talk about basketball, let's talk about basketball. She says, I'm focused on the game, I'm focused on winning, which is exactly what she should say. But I understand for teams other than the Indiana Fever, the sort of competitive disadvantage you are at playing against Caitlin Clark. One of the reasons why I hated Tom Brady so much is that he played for a team that I didn't like and that I didn't want to see win. And I was a Peyton Manning fan at the height of Tom Brady's career. And for so many years, the Colts couldn't make it to the Super Bowl because Tom Brady stood in his way. So it wasn't that I disliked Brady personally. It was just he was an impediment. I mean, he was the best quarterback in the league, and he was preventing my favorite quarterback from getting any further in the playoffs. And, the thing about this is, you don't win by cheap shotting the opponent. You win by putting together a team that can address the issues that you face and going against the opponent. And that's the problem right now with Caitlin Clark. Nobody can stop her. They can't guard her. They can't stop her from scoring, and so they're resorting to cheap shots. But Cunningham has set notice to the rest of the league, and it's like she's Rodman to Caitlin's MJ. And it should be a lot of fun. And I'll tell you what, have you ever heard me say anything ever about the WNBA? No, you have not, because I don't really care. But now you've got Black Belt Barbie playing Mizzou tough and protecting the best player in the league. Hell yeah, I'm there, man. I'm watching this. I'm paying attention.
Well, there you go. And that's the point. And that's honestly, the WNBA needs players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese to build the brand. You know, if you think back, the NBA was not a big brand until the end of the 70s and the early 80s when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came in the league. And Caitlin Clark's kind of like, that Larry Bird type in a lot of ways, with the chirping and being from Indiana and all that. But the thing is, the league needs that because that's what builds the brand. There's a lot of, I've heard people complain, why isn't the WNBA as popular as the NBA? Why aren't we making as much money as the NBA? And the thing is, you're not as popular overall. You haven't got as many people paying. You're not making as much money. Therefore, there is less money to be paid out. And if you want to make a run at fixing that, the best way to do it is not to complain and then say, hey, we're entitled to this. No, you need to build the brand just like the NBA did. And this is how they're going to do it. And frankly, I think the WNBA players need to quit, being so petty jealous of Caitlin Clark, because when she wins, the whole league wins. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. And if you don't like her on a competitive level, get better, be better,
exactly.
Figure something out.
Exactly.
The problem in defending Clark is you can have a really tough defense and defend her at the perimeter. She's still going to hit a 45-foot three-pointer. You cannot guard against that. She is and it was the same thing when Steph Curry came onto the scene. It's like, he's too little, he can't play. And then he's just bombing threes from 100 feet away, and it's like, can't guard it. You can't guard against it. It's an absolute cheat code. But, man, is it fun to watch.
Exactly. And speaking of the NBA, Game 6 of the NBA Finals are tonight. The Oklahoma Thunder have a chance to close it out on the road in Indiana. But the Pacers are at home, so they've got a chance to send the series back to Oklahoma for a winner-take-all Game 7. Mark, what are your thoughts?
The Pacers are going to win this game. I don't see any way that they don't win it unless Oklahoma City just comes out and puts their boot up against their head right from the very beginning. But I don't see that happening. I mean, again, I've said so many times, I am not a gambler. I just consider it the height of foolishness to put hard-earned money against the outcome of a game that no one could foresee. If somebody wants to loan me a $5 to put on Underdog Sports, I'd be happy to risk your money against a bet on the Indiana Pacers to send this back to Oklahoma for a decisive Game 7.
It's going to be interesting, but that's going to be on TV tonight. It's going to be on ABC. So those of you in Poplar Bluff and in the surrounding area that are listening, if you don't have cable, you can just pull out your antenna and watch it on Channel 15.
I remember, back during the Jordan days, before when it was just, cable and antenna TV, the NBA Finals were one of the biggest events of the summer, because there was no football and, baseball. Baseball is mostly day games, really. A lot of day games in the summertime schedule. And then everything else on regular network TV was just summertime reruns. So the NBA Finals, everybody made a point of being home to watch the finals. And frankly, I've not watched 1 minute of any of these games, even in highlights. I'm just checking out the scores to keep aware of what's going on. It's really amazing. And again, I hate to sound like an old man. Hey kids, get off my yard, get off my grass. But it really is it's such a dramatic change culturally from the way it used to be. Something like the NBA Finals, regardless of which teams were playing. I mean, it really was must-see viewing. But now there are just so many other things to do, so many other things to watch, so many other options to draw from. You really can't say a whole lot about it. I'm going to segue from that into talking about a little thing that I was chatting about, and I'll give a shout out to my friend Jeff South. Jeff is a friend from high school. He's also an independent novelist. His first book is called Kilroy Was Here, and it's a great read if you like humorous science fiction in the vein of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Kilroy Was Here is great fun. He's going to be coming out with a second book here later on this year called Someone Else's Book Club. And he shot me this idea. It was actually a Facebook memory from something that he had said a few years ago. And it gave me an idea of something that we can do here through these summer doldrums. So I'm going to throw this out not only to you, Mike, but to all of our listeners. But the idea was for a sequel to Bull Durham, in which a major league team whose general manager is Ebby Calvin Nuke Lelouch. He's retired from baseball, and now he's the GM for a team, and the team is just circling the drain, and so he goes back to the minors to hire Crash Davis, who's a minor league manager, to come up to the show and manage the major league team. And I'm like, oh man, who wouldn't want to jump on this, especially if you could get Tim Robbins and Kevin Costner to sign back on?
Oh wow, dude, that would be a fun watch.
Yeah. So in the weeks to come, let's think about some other classic sports movies where you could do reboots or sequels, or just something to connect with those classic sports movies from the 80s and 90s.
Mark, I like that. That will be something we can talk about next week and in the weeks to come. That's going to be, I mean, you've already got my wheels turning right now, so that does sound legit. And before we wrap up, we're going to talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup Finals. They concluded the other night, and the Florida Panthers are once again the champions of the NHL.
Yeah. Am I excited about that? No, I'm not. Am I excited about the fact that they've won back-to-back Stanley Cups? No, not really. Here's the thing that bothers me about this. The word dynasty. They've won 2 in a row. Stop. It's not a dynasty. Okay? Dynasty was the Boston Celtics under Red Auerbach. Okay? A dynasty was UCLA under John Wooden. Dynasty was the New England Patriots during the heyday of Belichick and Brady. Are the Kansas City Chiefs a dynasty? Let's see what they do this year. I don't think that 2 championships in 5 years constitutes a dynasty by any means. I think now if you win 5 championships in 10 years, yeah, you were a dynasty in a particular period. But I think it's worth having conversations like, why do we need to talk about sports dynasties? What is the appeal for sports fans for a particular team to win their league championship over and over again? You want to talk about a sports dynasty? The New York Yankees, prior to the 21st century, were the baseball dynasty. Now, when's the last time they won a World Series? I mean, I can't tell you. It's been more than 20 years. 2009. Okay, so a little bit less than 20 years. But, I mean, they definitely have not been a 21st century dynasty. But, I saw, are the Florida Panthers a dynasty? No, 2 in a row is not. So let's settle down. Let's stop trying to tell that story Because you know what? Good for Florida. They had a great postseason. They had an absolutely stunning postseason. And in the opening round, they knocked off the second seed Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games. They took out the top seeded Maple Leafs. They went all the way to 7 games, but Game 7 was a decisive win, 6-1. They crushed Carolina Hurricanes again in 5 games, and then it only took them 6. So they've had an absolutely fantastic postseason. But let's stop trying to identify dynasties before they're even established. That's something for us to look back on. The Chicago Bulls under Jordan, and especially Jordan with Pippen, were a dynasty.
Yes.
But the thing to remember for those who are very quick to crown dynasties in sports, just remember this: every empire that has ever existed crumbled to dust far sooner than they ever expected to. When I was a kid in the 70s and a teenager in the 1980s, the USSR, the Soviet Union, Communist Russia, they looked like an absolute inevitability. It's like they were going to be the mortal enemy of the United States forever and ever. And in 1992, it simply crumbled into dust. It disintegrated into nothingness. So the lesson, as always, is that nothing lasts forever. And if you are lucky enough to experience success with your favorite sports team, don't look to the future. Enjoy the present day. Celebrate the victory. Remember it. Cherish it. Because who knows? It may be a long time until you make it back. And if you don't believe me, go ask Jerry Jones down in Dallas.
Exactly. But on that note, that is our show for this week. I'm Mike Bueller.
I'm Mark Sanders.
And you have been listening to the Sports Desk with Mike, Mark, and Kyle.